The dust motes danced in the late afternoon sun, slanting through the grimy bay window. Catching on the faded floral wallpaper, Grandmother Elara called vintage charm. Me, Liam, just Liam, ex-mechanic, current indentured servant to the grande dame of deception herself. And honestly, most days, I felt like I was drowning in the thick, cloying scent of lavender air freshener and slow-burning resentment. They brought me in 6 months ago. Grandmother needs help, Declan, the eldest son, had said, his voice slick as oil on chrome. He ran some hedge fund, wore suits that cost more than my truck. Just companionship, light housekeeping. She's slipping. Head gestured vaguely towards his temple, the universal sign for losing her marbles. His sister, Moira, the perpetually pinched-faced one married to the plastic surgeon, had nodded vigorously, her pearls clicking like tiny, judgmental teeth. Dementia, the doctor suspects. Early stages. Tragic. Her sigh sounded like it cost extra. Tragic, my ass. From day one, Elara Vance wasn't slipping. She was performing. Masterfully. The first clue was the eyes. When the kids were around, they'd go vacant, watery, unfocused. She'd fumble with a teacup. Spill imaginary tea. Ask Declan who he was again with this fragile, trembling voice that cracked just so. The moment the door clicked shut behind them, those eyes snapped sharp as broken flint. Clear, calculating, cold. She'd straighten up from her hunched posture like a soldier snapping to attention, the tremor vanishing from her hands. Liam, she'd rasp, that frail voice replaced by something dry and papery, yet utterly commanding. Fetch my ledger. Not a diary. A ledger. Black leather. Thick, heavy. It lived locked in the bottom drawer of the monstrous oak dresser in her room. Inside weren't recipes or memories, but meticulous accounts. Dates, times, names, transcripts, their words. Declan, visit 12/3, mother, be reasonable. The market's volatile. Putting the beach house in a trust now protects it for you, of course. Think of the taxes. Note, winked at Moira when he thought I wasn't looking. Bastard, Moira, visit 12/10, really, mother, wearing that old thing. People will talk. Declan's right about the trust. And frankly, that hideous emerald ring, it's so gaudy. Wouldn't you prefer something more tasteful for your condition? Note, eyes fixed on the ring the entire time. Vulture. Closing parenthesis. Declan and Moira. Conference call overheard 12/15. Just wasting away. Honestly, Moira, the sooner the better. That reverse mortgage on the main house should cover the facility for a few years. Then the properties and the jewelry. Especially that emerald. Though God knows what she's done with the rest. She read me passages sometimes, her voice devoid of the tremor, stripped bare of any pretense except ice. Hear that, Liam. The vultures are circling, measuring the curtains before the body's cold. Shed tapped the page with a bony, perfectly manicured finger. They think him rotting. They can't wait for me to rot. He'd just grunt, polish the already gleaming silver, or rearrange pills in the days of the weak dispenser they'd insisted on. What do you say to that? I needed the job. Badly. The garage had closed. The medical bills for my own well, that was a debt I was still drowning in. Elara paid cash, generously, under the table. No questions asked. It was blood money. I knew it even then. But desperation has a funny way of muffling your conscience. Then came the proposition. Not in the sick way, though the air in that old, too quiet house sometimes felt thick with unspoken sickness. No, this was colder. It was after a particularly vicious visit. Moira had tried to strong-arm Elara into signing power of attorney, waving papers under her nose, while she pretended not to understand. Declan had stood by the window, radiating impatience, checking his diamond-crusted watch every 30 seconds. When they finally left, slamming the door with barely concealed frustration, the silence that followed was brittle. Elara sat motionless in her wing-back chair for a full 10 minutes. Then she rose, went to her room, and returned with the ledger and a thick, unmarked manila envelope. She placed it heavily on the lace doily beside her untouched tea. Liam, she stated, her ghost voice gone, replaced by pure, sharp steel. They want me gone. They want what's mine. They see weakness. Exploit it. She pushed the envelope towards me. I want you to help me disappoint them. I didn't touch the envelope. Help how, Mrs. Vance? More pretendy parties. A ghost of a smile, utterly devoid of warmth, touched her lips. In a manner of speaking, I intend to leave them nothing. Absolutely nothing. Every penny, every brick, every bauble they covet will be transferred, liquidated, gifted away to charities they despise, distant relatives they scorn. A final, glorious fuck you from the grave. Her eyes glittered. But it takes time, legalities, paperwork they mustn't suspect, time I may not appear to have for much longer. I shifted my weight. The air felt suddenly thin. Appear. She leaned forward, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Though we were utterly alone, I need to decline, Liam, visibly, painfully, enough to convince doctors, lawyers, my loving children, enough to make them sure the end is near, predictable, manageable, just long enough for me to pull every last thread of my wealth out from under their grasping fingers. Her gaze locked onto mine, unblinking. And I need you to help me manage that decline. My stomach turned to lead. Manage how? I'm not a doctor, Mrs. Vance. You're a man who understands mixtures, she said softly, tapping the ledger again. Engines, fluids, reactions. You understand cause and effect. She nudged the envelope closer. Inside is $5,000, cash, a retainer, and instructions. Simple substances, easily acquired. Non-lethal, Liam. Absolutely non-lethal. They mimic natural aging, fatigue, confusion, digestive distress, nerve pain, the slow, inevitable crumbling they're also eagerly anticipating. My mouth was dessert dry. Poison. Medicine, she corrected sharply. Medicine to induce the symptoms they expect to see. Medicine to buy me time. Administered slowly, meticulously, in tea, in soup. Tiny amounts, building gradually, just enough to make the performance believable. She paused, letting the implication hang like a noose in the dusty air. By the time the lawyers finalize the transfers, my dear children will be utterly convinced mother is on her last legs, babbling and frail, ready for the facility Declan's already pricing. They'll sign anything to expedite it, to get their hands on what's left before it's wasted. She savored the mispronunciation, a cruel echo of her act. And then once everything is irrevocably gone, once they are left with nothing but the bitter dregs of their own greed, then they can watch the woman they discarded truly fade. The symptoms will accelerate. The pain will become very, very real. And it will be far, far too late for them to profit from it. The coldness in her voice was absolute. It wasn't just revenge. It was annihilation. She wasn't just denying them her money. She was forcing them to witness her suffering, knowing they'd caused it with their impatience and greed, knowing they'd get nothing for it. She was turning their cruelty into a weapon, and their inheritance into her funeral pyre. I looked at the envelope. $5,000, more than he'd seen in months. It could clear the worst of moss bills, buy breathing room, and the promise of more, much more upon successful completion. The ledger sat open, a testament to their venom, Declan's condescension, Moira's avarice, laid bare in stark, handwritten sentences. Did they deserve it? In that moment, staring into Elara's ancient, furious eyes, listening to the echo of their callous words, yeah, they kinda did. The silence stretched. The clock on the mantel ticked like a tiny hammer. My conscience screamed. This was madness, evil, even. But the image of the repo notice on my truck, the harassing calls from the hospital billing department, they screamed louder. I picked up the envelope. It felt heavy, filthy, slow. I said, my voice rough. Tiny amounts, mimics natural stuff, non-lethal. Until after, a slow, satisfied smile spread across Elara's face. It didn't reach her eyes. Precisely, Liam, just helping nature along, helping me give my children exactly what they deserve. She leaned back, the frail grandmother persona settling over her like a shroud, but her eyes remained fixed on mine, sharp and predatory. Now, be a dear. My tea tastes a little weak today. That first drop felt like acid in my soul. It was a clear liquid, odorless, tasteless, according to her precise notes distilled from a common plant, easily explained away, as a harmless herbal supplement if ever questioned. Just a single drop in her afternoon Earl Grey. My hand shook so badly, I nearly spilled it. Elara watched me, her confused expression momentarily replaced by an unnerving intensity. "Steady, Liam," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the kettle's whistle. "Think of it as lubrication for the grand machinery of justice." She gave a dry, rattling cough that sounded terrifyingly genuine, then blinked, her eyes going vacant again, as if a switch had been flipped. Is it tea time already? Who are you again, young man?" The whiplash was dizzying. I placed the cup before her. "It's Liam, Mrs. Vance. Your tea." She fumbled for it, her hand trembling convincingly. "Oh, Liam. Yes, yes. Such a good boy. Is Declan coming today?" He promised. He'd bring the papers about the little house. Her voice trailed off, frail and lost. Inside, I felt sick. The performance was flawless. The poison was real, and I was part of it. The weeks bled into months, a grim routine punctuated by the children's increasingly callous visits. The drops continued, gradually, minutely increasing. Elara's symptoms began to manifest, weaving seamlessly into her performance. The genuine fatigue layered over the feigned confusion. A slight, persistent nausea made her pick at her food, adding to the illusion of decline. Occasional muscle twitches and fleeting pains, meticulously documented in her ledger alongside her children's transgressions, became physical evidence for the narrative. Declan and Moira ate it up. Their visits became shorter, more businesslike, thinly veiled inspections. They'd talk over her, around her, as if she wasn't there. "See the tremor, Moira," and she barely touched the scones. Declan would murmur, glancing at his sister. "The confusion is worse," Moira would reply, her voice tight with a grotesque mixture of concern and excitement. "Did you see her ask about father? He's been gone 20 years. Dr. Evans says it's textbook progression. We really need to expedite the power of attorney before she signs the house over to the damn cat shelter." Elara would sit amidst them, a silent, shrunken figure, seemingly lost in her own world, occasionally muttering about the pretty birds, or "Where's my Harold?" But I'd see it, the flicker of pure, venomous hatred in her eyes when their backs were turned, the slight tightening of her jaw when Moira eyed the emerald ring on her finger, the one piece of significant jewelry she still wore, a deliberate, glittering taunt. My role evolved. I wasn't just the poisoner, I was the stage manager, the witness, the confidant of sorts. I learned the rhythm of her deception, when to subtly steer conversation away from dangerous topics during the rare lucid moments she allowed them to see, when to remind her of things she supposedly forgot, reinforcing their belief in her deterioration. I became adept at reading the minuscule signals, a slight nod, a barely perceptible tightening of her lips that told me when to increase the dose or when to hold back. The ledger grew thicker, her entries became more vindictive, more detailed. She recorded Moira's barely concealed glee when a specialist mentioned advanced cognitive decline. She quoted Declan verbatim discussing funeral costs versus liquidating assets swiftly. She noted the dates they started bringing brochures for high-quality care facilities, brochures shed later shred with terrifying calm when they were gone. The physical toll on her became undeniable, even to me. The fatigue deepened into a bone weariness that wasn't entirely faked. Her appetite vanished, she became gaunt, the sharp angles of her face more pronounced. The tremors worsened, the nerve pains she described amplified by the toxins seemed genuine in their intensity, making her wince and gasp unexpectedly. Yet, through it all, her mind remained terrifyingly clear. The fire in her eyes, when unobserved, burned brighter, fueled by hatred and the grim satisfaction of her plan unfolding. The money flowed. Envelopes appeared under my pillow, in my jacket pocket left on a chair. Larger sums. Payment for services rendered, for silence bought. It cleared my debts. It bought a newer, reliable truck. It sat in my bank account like a guilty secret, growing fatter as Elara visibly withered. The legal machinations, orchestrated by a sharp, discreet lawyer Elara paid from a hidden account, progressed. Deeds were transferred. Stocks were sold. Trusts were established in names Declan and Moira would choke on. The beautiful, imposing Vance family home was quietly mortgaged to the hilt, the funds diverted. The beach house vanished into the ownership of a marine conservation charity. Declan publicly mocked. The process was slow, deliberate, hidden beneath layers of bureaucracy and Elara's fragile state, which required extra protections and safeguards her lawyer expertly exploited. The children grew impatient, then suspicious, then openly hostile. Declan stormed into the house one Tuesday, face flushed with anger, waving a letter from the bank about the main house mortgage. "Mother, what is the meaning of this? Reverse mortgage. Without consulting us. This is financial suicide. You can't possibly understand the implications." He loomed over her chair. Elara blinked up at him, her eyes wide and watery. "Mortgage. Is that like the flowers? The purple ones? Do you like the purple ones, Declan?" Her voice quavered perfectly. "Not the damn flowers," Declan roared, slamming his fist on the side table, making her teacup rattle. "The house. Your house. You've borrowed against it. Do you even comprehend what you've done?" Moira rushed in, drawn by the shouting. "Declan, calm down. She doesn't understand." She shot him a furious look, then plastered on a sickly sweet smile for Elara. "Mother, darling, it's okay. Declan's just worried about you. We need to help you manage things, remember. Sign the papers we brought, so we can fix this little misunderstanding." Elara shrank back in her chair, pulling her shawl tighter, her lower lip trembling. "I don't like loud noises, Moira. It scares the birds. Make him stop. Please make him stop." A single, perfect tear tracked down her parchment cheek. The performance was masterful. Declan looked ready to explode. Moira looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. They exchanged a glance loaded with frustration and a dawning, chilling realization their meal ticket was vanishing before their eyes, and they were powerless to stop it. The dementia shield was proving frustratingly effective. Later, after they'd stormed out, promising to be back with the lawyers, Elara sat perfectly still. The tear was gone. The trembling stopped. She picked up her ledger, her hand steady as a rock. "Visit 7/18. Declan apoplectic mortgage, threatened, implied incompetence." Moira faux concern masking pack, pushed power again. They smell the blood in the water, but the shark is still swimming. Transfer of remaining stocks finalized today. Emerald ring valuation complete. Auction scheduled for next month. She looked up at me, a grim, triumphant light in her eyes. "They feel the ground shifting. Liam, the panic is delicious. Pour me a brandy. The good stuff." And she paused, a cruel smile touching her lips. "Double the evening dose." It's time. The pain became harder to ignore. The final transfers were a thing of bureaucratic beauty, a testament to Elara's meticulous planning and her lawyer's ruthless efficiency. The last of the liquid assets vanished into charitable trusts. The deed to the heavily mortgaged main house was signed over to a historical society. The emerald ring, the final, glittering symbol of Vance wealth, was sold at auction to an anonymous beer overseas. Elara wore a cheap, glass replica the day Moira next visited, pointing at it with feigned childish delight. "Look, Moira, pretty green, like the grass." The look on Moira's face a mixture of horror, disbelief, and raw, unadulterated greed thwarted, was almost worth the hell was complicit in. Almost. With the last signature secured, the last asset gone, a palpable shift occurred in Elara Vance. It wasn't relief, it was activation. The careful, slow mimicry of decline was over. Now began the calculated, accelerated descent. My orders changed. The doses increased significantly. The clear liquid was joined by a fine, bitter powder added to our evening broth. The effects were no longer subtle imitations, they were pronounced, debilitating, and terrifyingly real. The fatigue became profound exhaustion. She slept most of the day, her sleep punctuated by groans of pain. The nausea turned into violent, wrenching bouts of sickness that left her weak and trembling. The nerve pain escalated from twinges to searing, electric agony that made her cry out in the dead of night, her knuckles white on the bedsheets. The confusion, once carefully timed, became more frequent and profound. though flashes of that terrifying lucidity still surfaced, usually when the pain was at its peak, when she demanded an update on her children's reactions. Her body was failing rapidly. The toxins were ravaging her system, attacking nerves, disrupting digestion, leaching her strength. The vibrant, hate-filled woman was being consumed, not just by age, but by the very poison she had chosen as her weapon. The house, once filled with the quiet tension of deception, now echoed with the sounds of genuine suffering, ragged breaths, pained whimpers, the soft, awful thud of her frail body collapsing when she tried to stand unaided. I was drowning in it. The guilt was a physical weight, a constant nausea worse than anything he'd ever felt working with engine degreaser. The money meant nothing. The sight of Declan and Moira's frustration brought no satisfaction. Watching Elara endure the agonizing consequences of her own design was horrifying. I was no longer just the administrator, I was the torturer. Her screams in the night were my doing. Her wasted frame, my handiwork. The ledger entries became sparse, shaky, dictated to me in moments of coherence between waves of agony, still chronicling her children's visits, but now tinged with a grim satisfaction that curdled my blood. Visit 8/1. Moira, white as a sheet, saw the ring on, tried to bully Ree. House transfer, lawyer present, shut her down. She cried. Crocodile tears, tasted like victory. Pain very bad today. Make it sharper tomorrow. Liam. Declan came the next day. He looked haggard, older. The smooth confidence was gone, replaced by a desperate, simmering rage. He found Elara curled in her chair, shivering under a blanket despite the summer heat, her eyes half closed, breath rasping. He didn't bother with pretense. Mother, he said, his voice tight. The house, the stocks, the ring, everything gone. What have you done? Elara's eyes fluttered open. They were clouded with pain, but for a second, that old, flinty sharpness pierced through. A ghost of a smile touched her cracked lips. Gone, she whispered, her voice a papery rustle. All gone like smoke. Like your concern, Declan. He flinched as if struck. You spiteful old witch, he hissed, leaning in close, his face contorted. Was this your plan all along? To leave us with nothing? To punish us? For what? For trying to protect you? For trying to secure your legacy? Legacy, Elara coughed, a wet, rattling sound. You wanted my things, not me. She drew a shuddering breath, the effort immense. Now you have neither. The raw hatred in his eyes was terrifying. You're dying, he spat, the words venomous. Alone, in pain, and there's nothing left. Was it worth it? This petty vengeance? Elara closed her eyes. A single tear, this one seemingly genuine, squeezed out, tracing a path through the wrinkles. She didn't answer him. Instead, she whispered, so faintly I barely caught it. Liam, the pain, it's time. Make it stop. It wasn't a request for the toxin. It was a plea. A broken, exhausted plea for the end shed engineered, but could no longer bear. Declan stared at her, his fists clenched, trembling with impotent fury. He looked at the shrunken, suffering figure in the chair, at the empty space where the emerald ring had been, at the faded grandeur of the house, now mortgaged to oblivion. He saw the utter desolation of his inheritance. The victory was Pyrrhic, the cost astronomical. He turned on his heel and left without another word, slamming the door so hard the window panes rattled. The silence that followed was broken only by Elara's ragged, pain-filled breathing. The ledger lay forgotten on the side table. The performance was over. Only the brutal, agonizing reality remained, and I was trapped in the center of it, the architect's assistant in a house of pain built on hatred, greed, and a terrible, terrible justice. The final dose wasn't just in the evening broth anymore. It hung heavy in the air, thick with the knowledge that the painful end she'd meticulously planned was finally here. And it was far worse than any of us could have imagined. The caretaker's curse wasn't just hers, it was mine now, too. And it was just beginning.